Okay, it is 4:37 a.m. and I can't really sleep, so I figured I'd finally do this. So, my mom encouraged me to write or make a video or something talking about everything that has been challenging me in the past few years, because I'm going through something that not a whole lot of people go through, and that I'm still not totally sure what is, but I feel like talking about it could help other people with this issue, whatever it may be. So, first off, if you're watching this, you probably know who I am, but if not, my name is Kinsley. I'm 23, almost 24, and I am a social worker, and I live in North Carolina. Lived there most of my life, and that's about it in terms of who I am. But for as long as I've been driving, so I'm almost 24, I learned to drive at 15, so almost close to a decade, have had a lot of issues with driving. Like, I just can't do it correctly, at least not the way most people can. So I tried to learn to drive at 15, about when most people do, and after a while it became kind of obvious that something just wasn't working. I couldn't stay on the road. I couldn't remember which side of the road to drive on. I couldn't remember when I was supposed to stop. Like, I would not see a stoplight or a stop sign. I would get confused when I was changing lanes. Literally every problem you could have while driving, I had. At 16, I took driver's ed and did fine in the bookwork part, which was normal for me. I made straight A's in school. And then I got behind the wheel, and I was so bad that the driver's ed teacher told me, and he was an asshole, but he said that no one else wanted to be in the car with me. And he, wouldn't call me back to finish my driving. And so my mom stepped in and gave a piece of her mind, and they put me with another driver's ed teacher who was a really great teacher, and at the end of our time together told me very honestly, it's just not safe to put you on the road yet. And I totally understood why he was saying that, and I respect him for telling me that. And so I spent the next 2 years trying to learn to drive, because I figured if I couldn't pass driver's ed, then I should just try and learn with my parents, and then when I was 18 I could just go and get an adult learner's permit, where all I had to do was pass a book test and spend time working until I could get to the real driver's test. And so I practiced, and at 18 I got my learner's permit, my adult learner's permit, easy enough because all I had to do was take a book test. And I spent 3 years practicing on and off, and then finally when I was 21 and a half, I took my driver's test and I passed. And I assumed that was the end of the road and all was good, and I had a license, I was able to pass the test, so I must be decent enough. I was very wrong. I started out driving on back roads and country roads. I still hadn't gotten on the highways. I knew I was smart enough to know to avoid that. And I was still having issues. I was getting in the wrong lane. I would turn out of somewhere and be driving on the wrong side of the road and not realize it, which I know sounds insane, but I couldn't remember what side of the road I was supposed to drive on. One of the biggest issues was that I couldn't tell left from right. I still can't really. And someone would say, get in the left lane or drive on the right side of the road, and I would just be like, I don't know. So I kind of, for the next couple years, survived by just driving only where I had to. When I got out of college, the first job I got, it was not very far, and so I drove there and back, and that was all I had to do. And other than that, I was still living at home, so I just went with my mom everywhere, and I didn't really have too many issues. Occasionally I would go out places with friends, like if I were driving, I would get honked at and not know why, or I would like drive on the wrong side of the road and my friend would be like, oh my god, what are you doing? And so probably the most memorable thing I did was right after I got my license, one of my best friends and I went out to get something to eat, and I like murdered a traffic cone because I realized I'd made a wrong turn, and she said, okay, you know, just turn around the parking lot, you'll be fine. And I tried to turn into a parking lot and just went right over a traffic cone. So I was still having problems, but I was able to, for the most part, work around them. I finally, when I was 23, so about 6 months ago, I guess, I got a new job. I moved to a new town, and with my new job, I was driving constantly, and a lot at night. I was out in the community, working with people, and that's exactly what I wanted to be doing, so I was thrilled. But as I started driving, I started having more and more issues, and because I was just driving so much more than I used to, and I was backing into ditches and running into poles at gas stations and just all sorts of stuff. And I mean, it got to the point where I was a little bit scared to get behind the wheel, not because I thought I would hurt anyone, but because I thought I would probably dip my car again, or get stuck, or just get a ticket, because I was just doing really kind of stupid stuff that anyone else would know not to do, but it just wasn't clicking in my mind, like, no, don't back straight up, because if you're not looking, you're gonna go off and end up in a ditch. You know, my logic was, if I back straight up, that's the way I came, I'll just back into the road. So that was not good. And so after I had had a few dust ups, and this was happening like weekly, and I was getting really freaked out and realizing that I wasn't going to be able to do my job and live independently if this kept happening, I went to the optometrist, and I was hoping there'd be an easy fix. There wasn't, unfortunately. He looked at my eyes and said, you know, you have bad vision, which I've known since I was 10, but I wear contacts and my vision is perfectly corrected. And, you know, other than that, nothing's wrong. And with your contacts, he said, you should be fine. And I obviously wasn't, so that's when I started thinking about what could be, what's wrong with me. And so, you know, everyone who knows me agreed that something was definitely up, because I can't do this fairly simple thing that every other, you know, adult my age can do without any problem. And I started thinking about other aspects of my life and realizing that even though I was really good at covering for them, there were other difficulties that kind of seemed related. Like I couldn't do things with multiple steps because I would get confused and overwhelmed, and it would just be too much to think about at once. And I had issues sometimes doing things like getting the words that I needed out. I would get mixed up with things really easily. I would lose things constantly. I would forget what I was doing, and I've been like that for as long as I can remember. And so I started, you know, on this journey of figuring out what exactly is wrong with me and how can I fix it, because I want to be able to drive as easily as anyone else, and I don't want to constantly feel like I'm having to try really hard to do normal everyday things that other people can do. And so, to start with, my doctor sent me to, my optometrist sent me to a visual therapist for specialized vision therapy. And the vision therapist, looked at me and said that basically I had some issues with my eyes working together the way they're supposed to. That they didn't necessarily track right. There was a couple of things that he said, and I'll just get out the list and read them. Okay, I'm back. My camera died, so I had to take a little break. So this is what the vision therapist said was going on with me. I have a high amount of myopia. I have difficulty with 3D vision and cannot appreciate depth to a normal degree. My eye tracking skills are slightly jerky, and I have a midline shift to my right side where I feel that straight ahead is located. My spatial ability shows that I have difficulty relaxing my vision at both close and near, and I have poor focusing ability at near. So, yeah, that is the technical term for what's wrong with me. Still doesn't really give me a diagnosis, but it did give me something to work on in vision therapy. So I've been doing that for about close to 3 months now, and I don't know if it's really helped me or not, but if it's going to help at all, I'm willing to do it. So that's what happened when I went to the vision therapist. I also made an appointment with a neurologist, and I went to the neurologist, and he said, let's get some tests done. So I went to see a neuro-ophthalmologist, which is a person who is kind of a neurologist and kind of an eye doctor. Very unscientific explanation. So they did a bunch of tests on me and said that my eyes look pretty normal. I also was sent for an MRI by the neurologist. That came back normal too. So this has been over the course of several months, and thus far nothing has physically shown up wrong with my brain. So the next thing the neurologist wants to do is send me to see an occupational therapist for some ongoing occupational therapy, which I'm hopeful about. I feel like if anything's going to improve my everyday skills, and specifically my driving skills, it might be something like that. I still don't have an official diagnosis, but according to the neurologist, going to see an occupational therapist might help with that and might give them a better idea of what my diagnosis is. So I'm hopeful with that. So in the middle of going to the neurologist and getting sent all these places, I also saw 2 different psychiatrists. One said I definitely have ADHD, which could play into my driving issues if I can't focus. The other said that my symptoms weren't as definite or as clear, but there was a chance I did. The attentive type. I definitely don't have the hyperactive piece. So that is the only diagnosis that I've even kind of gotten, and that's not official. It's just probably. So with all that said, there's a couple of things that are my next steps. 1, the occupational therapy, like I mentioned, and then 2, since there is a decent chance I do have ADHD, and that could be affecting my driving, my doctor has written me a prescription for Adderall to see if that helps. So I haven't tried that yet. I'm a little freaked out too. But I'm also excited to see if maybe it will help me focus like never before, because I can't focus. Like, anyone who knows me will say I get distracted very easily. It's amazing that I was able to do well in school with a scatterbrain and as easy to distract as I am. But I'm hoping I might try it tomorrow to see what it does. It's short acting, so if I don't react well with it, and if I don't like it, it should be out of my system fast enough. So I will maybe do an update about that. But that and the occupational therapy are my next steps. So that's where I am. I would like to have a diagnosis. Just because I'd like to be able to put a word to what's wrong with me, because something is definitely wrong. I think there's a decent chance I have dyspraxia. I've also wondered if I have sensory processing disorder, because the best way to describe my issues driving, and I've said this 1,000 times to people, is I just can't process it all. Like, I feel like I have an extremely slow processing speed. There's just too much going on when I'm driving, and I can't get it all through my head fast enough. There's too many things you have to focus on and think about, and I think to an extent I'm like that in everyday life too. Like I mentioned, I'm not very good with multi-step instructions because it's too much to process. So the processing is the biggest thing in my opinion. I just don't process things as fast as I should, and I feel like that affects mainly my driving, but a lot of other parts of my life as well. And so that's where I'm at. I'm hoping that keeping this video diary, making these videos, will be a good way for me to look back at the progress I've made and to really just get my feelings out as time goes on, because this has already been a really long journey and it's probably nowhere near its end. I'd like to think that, there's an easy fix for whatever is causing me to have these issues, but I don't think there is. I'd like to be able to eventually look back and think, remember when I couldn't drive? And so hopefully I will one day. But until then, I'm going to keep making these videos talking about everything that happens. And that's all I have to say today.